В центральном парке салют в Москве. Мечтают парни о ВДВ. Любым оружием владеть легко. Знамя победы главнее всего.
This is the Russian Airborne Forces, or
Воздушно-десантные войска России.
a specialized unit in the Russian military, outfitted with some of the most advanced equipment and vehicles Mother Russia has on offer. Unlike most other conventional factions, the VDV are almost entirely mechanized, sacrificing mobility for raw armored protection, speed, and firepower, with massive implications. The VDV is a monster of combined arms warfare and vehicular destruction, but only if you play to their strengths. Due to their many quirks, squad players tend to struggle to adapt to the VDV's unique playstyle. So today, let me tell you why you suck with the VDV, and how to get better. Now, we can't break down the VDV as we have factions in the past with general strengths and weaknesses. This is because the VDV's greatest strengths are also their greatest weaknesses. In short, this is a faction of double-edged swords. Additionally, the VDV is a vehicle-focused faction. Their most interesting and important details are in their vehicles, so we will focus on them first before moving on to the infantry. And lastly, for all you nerds out there, yeah, I know it's pronounced VDV, not VDV, but as an ignorant American, that hurts my brain too much, so I'm just gonna say VDV. Let's get into it. As I said before, the VDV are an almost completely mechanized faction. Therefore, they lack the standard logistics trucks of the other conventional factions and are instead supplied with two unique armored personnel carriers for transport and logistics. These two vehicles are perhaps the VDV's biggest advantage. Don't let the BTRD's small size throw you off. This is a fantastic armored personnel carrier. For starters, it does not require any crewmen to operate, is amphibious, and can seat up to 10 soldiers. For armament, it has 2-hole machine guns, only capable of firing in a very short arc in front of the vehicle, and on top we have an open-top heavy machine gun. Perhaps most importantly, the BTRD comes equipped with 2 charges of 40mm smoke launchers, as well as a smoke generator, operated by the driver, giving the BTRD increased survivability. All this for an incredible 5-ticket cost, as much as a technical or a transport would usually cost for other factions. All in all, the BTRD is a beast simply in the amount of utility it brings to an infantry squad. It can provide a surprising amount of fire support for a team's push with its 3 machine guns, can screen an infantry's push with its driver-operated smoke generators and launchers, can easily and quickly transport soldiers around the battlefield with unusually high speeds for a tracked vehicle, and has great survivability due to its aforementioned speed and smoke launchers. Most units will provide more than enough BTRDs to attach to every infantry squad. Its bigger brother, the BTR MDM, does not hold back either. It may be a heckin' chonker, but it still moves like an elephant on the run, and carries 1-hole machine gun with a small arc of fire at the front of the vehicle, as well as an RWS machine gun on top. It still seats 10 soldiers and has a driver-operated smoke launcher and generator just as the BTRD does. This monster also only costs 5 tickets. There is no better way to say this. The BTRDs and the BTR MDMs are the backbone of the VDV faction. Every infantry squad should bring at least one for quick and capable transport and fire support. Still not convinced that these shitboxes are secretly overpowered? Well then, for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to enumerate all the reasons why these APCs are the VDV's biggest strength, and more importantly, how you should use them in the field. It is generally advised for all infantry squads, regardless of faction, to bring a vehicle with you, as it will allow you to move quickly from an irrelevant position to a relevant one on large maps. Most factions use trucks for this purpose, but if an enemy finds your vehicle, he will likely blow the tires, immobilizing the vehicle until the repair kit tends to the wheels. There is also the potential of being shot out of these trucks, leaving a valuable logistics truck abandoned. This is a massive inconvenience to a squad leader, and it doesn't help that usually the guy who shot out your wheels is lurking nearby, or even outright camping the truck, preventing your squad from repositioning. The VDV do not have this issue, as most of their vehicles are tracked APCs. Obviously, you cannot be shot out of an APC, and the enemy will need anti-tank equipment to immobilize your tracks. As a result, the VDV will be more capable than other factions of repositioning their infantry squads quickly, efficiently, and reliably. On a strategic level, having an APC with up to 3 machine guns in every squad is a massive boost to an infantry squad's firepower and utility. The smoke launchers and generators give the squad more offensive capability to assault entrenched positions and close the gap by screening your infantry. Additionally, a mobile ammo box ensures that infantry are always supplied and ready to spam grenades, RPGs, and more at any point in time. Lastly, the ability to quickly and efficiently reposition when needed, and the additional tactical options that come from having an APC built into the squad make the VDV a force to be reckoned with. All in all, the attached APCs will mean the VDV can easily, at least on paper, out firepower and out utility the average conventional squad. To put it as bluntly as I can, the VDV's APCs is what makes the faction stand out. This is the major advantage you must leverage to ensure a VDV victory. In summary, mechanized infantry is the focus of the VDV faction. You should be attaching APCs to your squad and keeping them close for the aforementioned utility and fire support they provide. Embrace the additional tactical options given by the APC, and your infantry will pummel the enemy. As you might know, armor is not my strong suit. So for this section, I had the welcome help of 2 professional armor players, Rinzelo and Jack John from Tactical Trigonometry. The VDV armor prioritizes speed over raw health and firepower. They can gain armor superiority very quickly due to their Sprut mobile gun system not having a spawn delay timer, bringing a powerful 120mm cannon into the fight right from match start. Used well, this can snowball the game in the VDV's favor. The Sprut MGS may look like a tank, sound like a tank, and even smell like a tank, but it is absolutely not a tank. It is instead the definition of a glass cannon, with powerful anti-tank guided missiles and cannon capable of penetrating all vehicles in the game, but it is weak to autocannons and up. The Sprut's strengths are in its speed and armament, so it should play as an ambush predator, firing on enemy vehicles and dodging away before any retaliation can be dished out. Jack John recommends to not take on the enemy tank directly, due to your massive ammo rack. One well-placed shot is all the enemy needs to destroy the Sprut. When needed, the Sprut can certainly back up its tank and may be the deciding factor of who wins the tank fight. When it cannot be avoided, you must fight the enemy tank as you might a sniper. A sniper does not stay in one place after he fires. He moves to a different position before firing again. He never repeats the same angle, and that is how you must play the Sprut. The Sprut is fundamentally an armor hunting vehicle. Rinzelo states that you should not use the Sprut as you would a traditional IFV due to your fragility. Respect infantry-based anti-tank, and place a wide berth between any areas infested with infantry. Surprisingly, the Sprut will lose a head-to-head fight with an experienced IFV crew, so when confronting enemy IFVs, shoot their turret first before going in for the kill. Overall, Spruts need to utilize their superior speed and armament to make up for their fragility, using hidden run tactics and ambushes to be effective. But when the right players are behind the wheel, the VDV have a significant advantage over enemy armor. The BMD-4 is Jack John's preferred vehicle for the VDV. It is the definition of an infantry fighting vehicle with not only a 30mm autocannon in both AP and fragmentation, but also a 100mm short-range cannon with fragmentation rounds, perfect for slaughtering infantry even through structures. Its speed is impressive for a heavy-tracked vehicle of its kind. Its weakness lies in its lack of anti-tank capabilities. The anti-tank guided missile nerf hit this vehicle particularly hard, now taking a 1.5 second delay and needing at least a 100-meter distance from the target for the missile to arm. It still has its autocannon, but does not have the best armor, so, similar to the Sprut, use its superior speed to get around enemy vehicles and catch them off guard. The BMD-1 is the often overlooked vehicle of the VDV, essentially a faster version of the BMP-1 without anti-tank guided missiles. This This vehicle has no stabilizer and is only armed with fragmentation and heat rounds from its 100mm cannon. But before you throw your hands up in disgust and run to your nearest BMD-4 or Sprut, note that sometimes you will not have a choice but to use this vehicle, as certain units have only the BMD-1 at the start of the game, and will have to wait for the tank to roll out. Due to its lack of anti-tank guided missiles and its unstabilized cannon, any straight up fight against an experienced IFV crew, whether it be a Striker or a Bradley, is going to end badly for you. Therefore, the BMD-1 should largely avoid armored fights. If you must fight an armored vehicle, the fight will largely be determined by whether or not your gunner can hit the IFV's turret or not. If so, you will win the fight, but that's only if you can get the drop on the enemy vehicle and your gunner hits the shot before the enemy vehicle can react. My suggested use for the BMD-1 is to use it as a self-propelled artillery piece. You get many fragmentation rounds and a good enough scope, so simply marking the map and firing from a long distance into enemy infantry may be the best mileage you can get out of the BMD-1 until a better vehicle spawns. The BTR-ZD is the VDV's dedicated mobile anti-air platform, mounted with 2-hole PKT machine guns, an open-top cord, and of course a ZIS-3 anti-air platform on top. No other conventional faction has dedicated anti-air vehicles, therefore, the VDV have a decisive advantage in the war for the sky. The T-72B3 is a copy-paste from the Russian ground forces. For the sake of time, we won't focus on it as it is not unique to the VDV. Generally though, it is a great MBT that emphasizes just how powerful VDV armor can be. With the armor out of the way, we now need to talk about the VDV's greatest weakness, and how they can overcome it. Leave it to the Russians to make things weird. As you know, most factions keep it simple. They have a couple logistics trucks with a lot of supplies and space for troops, and you simply drive around in those or use helicopters. Armored personnel carriers are usually around, but are largely optional, and too often they are outright ignored. For the VDV, however, there will hardly ever be a logistics truck around. Usually, there will instead be BTRD logistics APCs. It carries 2,000 supplies instead of a truck's 3,000 supplies, is unarmed compared to its carrier variant, and can only seat 3 soldiers. This has some massive implications for your logistics. Let's start on a positive note. Having armored logistics trucks means you won't get sniped out by some random guy behind the front line. They also work as a mobile ammo box, so you don't need to build an ammo crate. As stated before, these APCs must be tracked with some kind of AT equipment in order to be immobilized, instead of logistics trucks whose wheels simply have to be shot out. That's all I can think of for positives though. These vehicles are largely a hindrance to the VDV. For one, they simply carry less supplies, but most importantly, they are significantly slower than your average logistics vehicle. This is of massive consequence, as the side who has a better rollout will usually have the advantage in the match. Both sides will be rushing to not only backcap their respective objectives, but will be rushing to the midpoint objective. Whoever gets there faster and sets up will likely cap the midpoint first. Therefore, if the VDV has to wait for its helicopters to be brought online, it's likely the enemy will have set up a fob and already spread out around the midpoint by the time the VDV ground logistics arrive. The VDV are far from hopeless, however. One is through their powerful vehicles, who will have an advantage over enemy armor, especially for the first minutes of the game due to their Spruts and BMD-4s spawning in early, as well as their ungodly good APCs. The smaller, light BTRDs and BTR MDMs can leverage their smoke launchers and machine guns, whilst the heavy armor keeps the enemy IFVs at bay. The VDV can simply push out more firepower at the beginning of the game, both against infantry and vehicles. But this is only if your team can effectively concentrate its armor and infantry on the same objective. Your APCs will be helpless without heavy armor, and your heavy armor will be helpless without infantry. Another alternative is through the use of transport trucks. These are just as fast as your opponent's vehicles, but of course have no logistical ability, meaning your squad will be working off a rally. Still, this gives you a chance at disrupting the enemy's setup on the midpoint and set up a front line until your logistics APCs can get in behind you and set up a fob for the rest of the team. If you're playing VDV, I highly recommend at least one squad in a transport truck to do just that. Without this, your team may have a hard time taking the objective. Back to the logistics side of things, these BTRD logistics vehicles are additionally terrible at resupplying on large maps. It took me a whopping 4 minutes and 13 seconds to drive 2,000 meters in the BTRD logistics truck on Harju. In comparison, a logistics truck took only 2 minutes and 33 seconds to drive the same distance with the same route. Even considering human error, the truck will still get to the finish line in almost half the time the BTRD does. Maps like Manakugan and Gorodok will take forever to resupply, and remember that you still get a third less supplies than your normal logistics truck does. Therefore, we have to talk about the VDV's enormous reliance on helicopters. Put simply, if you want regular supplies, you must rely on your helicopter pilots to be competent at their job. If you get incompetent pilots that run into the enemy IFVs or crash into trees, your team is going to find itself out of ammo and FOBs real soon. I would be remiss to say that almost all VDV vehicles are amphibious. This is obviously a big advantage on maps with water, like Black Coast or Singjan Island. It allows you to take shortcuts through the water, getting behind enemy lines or avoiding enemy ambushes and blockades. Most of these vehicles are, however, very slow in water, so if at all possible, always choose a road over a river. While their vehicles are arguably the star of the show, the VDV Infantry are still worth talking about. The VDV's standard weapon is the AK-12 short rifle. On paper, this weapon has the exact same statistics as the Russian ground forces AK-74, but in practice, it seems the sway is higher. Their optics can be a bit clunky, but as long as you stick to either the 1P87 holographic sight or the 1P78 3x scope, the AK-12 will perform just fine. The AK-12 belongs in the short rifle / carbine category, meaning the rifle has low recoil, snappy handling, and good point firing. It will however have low suppressive value per bullet, so leave the suppression to the machine guns. The VDV's standard grenades are impact grenades. Unlike a regular timed fuse grenade, this grenade will explode the moment it impacts a surface. This has some consequences for the infantry. Pro: your enemies can't run from your grenades. Any throw you do over a wall or into a window is practically guaranteed to kill anything inside that building or on the other side of that wall. There's no escaping the Pokemon ball. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. At a macro level, VDV infantry will be able to more quickly apply pressure and clear enemies out of concealment and cover with impact grenades. No waiting for the grenade to explode, simply throw and push. An advantage that may only give you seconds, but in a game like Squad, seconds can mean everything. But there is one critical weakness of impact grenades: you can't bounce them. Any clever wallbangs you figured out will not work as the VDV. Secondly, their grenade is perfectly capable of team killing you and your friends if you're not careful. Lastly, impact grenades will force you to expose yourself for a reliable angle to throw the grenade more often than timed fuse grenades. The fire support marksman is thankfully replaced by the scout role. Unfortunately, the scout is not very useful either. The scout role comes equipped with the AS Val with an integrated suppressor. The scout is completely unique to the VDV, and the AS Val is itself restricted to only this role. It is the only silenced weapon in Squad. The suppressor aspect is a gimmick at best. The AS Val sound is very distinctive and easy to spot even from a couple hundred meters away, and since you'll likely be fighting at close range anyway, there is little to no utility value for the suppressor. The weapon itself, being a submachine gun, is strong. It has very little recoil and a competent holographic sight. It is very strong for high octane fire and maneuver, as well as flanking. Be very aggressive with this weapon. In theory, the role of the scout is to push ahead of the squad and scout for intel, all while taking out enemy sentries. In practice, it's just a good weapon. Now, as a responsible squad YouTuber, I feel I need to tell you the hard truth. The scout, while fun, is probably not a great pick for your squad. Sure, the AS Val is in the right hands going to get you many kills and flanks, and it's definitely not as bad as the marksman class. But by picking the scout class, you are actively sacrificing another, more utility heavy fire support role, just to get a better weapon. That's one less grenadier to provide heavy hitting fire support, or one less lat to deal with enemy vehicles ruining your day. Even a rifleman brings an ammo bag to the squad. So be responsible and pick another kit. Both their light anti-tank and their heavy anti-tank kits have a variant that gives 1 extra heat and 1 extra tandem round respectively. Obviously, you should choose the kit with the extra round over the scope if available. Overall, the VDV infantry are more than capable at fighting at any range, but are strongest at close range due to the scout role and many of their powerful kits like the grenadier and machine gunner equipped with close combat optics or iron sights. The VDV commander isn't like the other girls. While basic bitches have to be near a fob to call in commander assets, the VDV commander can call in command assets from every one of their tracked vehicles. As for the assets themselves, they are fairly standard to conventional factions. The UAV remains a powerful reconnaissance vehicle. Use it to find enemy fobs and to call in your artillery barrages and S8 rocket strikes. The S8 rocket strikes are great for targeting enemy radios and enemy vehicles alike. And finally, you get access to either a 152mm static artillery barrage or a 152mm creeping artillery barrage. All in all, generic but still powerful assets for your team that I would be remiss to leave out. In summary, the VDV's strength lie in their fast, overpowering heavy armor, their amphibious capabilities, their infantry short-range combat prowess, and their utility-heavy APCs supporting mechanized infantry. Their weaknesses are few but catastrophic, as they suffer from an over-reliance on helicopters due to their obsession with tracked vehicles. They will be on average slower on rollout than their opponents, and will have trouble resupplying their fobs from the ground. Overall, this faction seems handcrafted to force squad players to use mechanized infantry, instead of your conventional motorized and on-foot squads. Therefore, you should lean into the VDV's strengths by using the mechanized infantry tactics and armor tactics I have shown in this guide. Now, don your blue beret, go to the Gap and buy all the Where's Waldo shirts you can, and remember, the paratrooper is forever betrothed to the sky.
Где отваги рождался рассвет, на камнях с опасной чертой.